Hello and welcome to Jurors in Disguise, the podcast that exposes liars. My name is MaryRose Peterson, and I'm the owner of Covert Ops Jury Investigations. What do we do? I'm glad you asked. We find the jurors who lied during jury selection so they would be chosen and denied our clients a fair trial. Tonight, I have the distinct pleasure of not only having my husband here with me, but also welcoming Bryan Savy, the attorney who negotiated Martin's freedom. So, welcome, Bryan.
Good evening. It's my pleasure to be here.
Well, Martin won't say the same. He came kicking and screaming.
Martin, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
He's like, "This is not my thing." I said, "Well, I understand.
I
I
get it.
understand that." But I felt like he really needed to be here to help tell the story since
Sure,
it was the three of us. But I'd love for you to start and just tell us whatever you'd like to say about how we met and that
sure,
day.
sure. Yeah, I remember. It seems like it wasn't that long ago, but and looking back on it, it's some time has passed and it's kind of flown by. But I do remember you contacting my office and there was some detailed information that you provided my staff, and it definitely drew my attention. And I said, well, this isn't your run of the mill, post conviction, type of call. And I remember, contacting you and getting more information. The more and more you told me, just my eyes were widening and widening. I really couldn't believe what I was hearing because at that point in time, I mean, I did do some post-conviction relief, but I would say that I was doing more trial work. So as a trial attorney, hearing that a juror would just blatantly lie about very material things that pertained to the heart of the case, it just was shocking. So I was definitely interested in helping, and I was able to get on board and work with you, and you had already done a lot of the legwork in finding some of these things, and obviously apparently it's your calling because now you're doing
We
it on the
are.
regular. Yeah. So I mean, you found your calling in exposing these types of things that are a weakness in our criminal justice system that hopefully we can draw some attention to and maybe make a difference moving forward so everybody can have a fair trial under the Sixth Amendment. So
Right. Well, as I recall, you only had about 2 weeks to get up to speed. So I
I,
was,
I did, but the the information you provided, it made it very easy to dig in and get up to speed because you, like I said, you had done a lot of the legwork and you had exposed some of these uh, lies, for lack of a better term, or omissions, material omissions, and there was other issues obviously with the case as well, related to weaknesses and deficiencies with the actual case in and of itself. So it was kind of the perfect storm of we have a lot to work with here, and I was ready to dig in and try to get Martin out as soon as possible because obviously that needed to happen as soon as possible.
yeah. Well, we were very grateful. And Martin and I had spent, what, 3 years at visitation every weekend on Saturdays and Sundays, writing out motions and arguments on paper plates with crayons because that's the only thing they would allow on visitation were crayons for the
Right.
kids. So we had to apologize to the children for borrowing their crayons, but we
Hey,
did.
they don't make it easy there, and that's one thing we've learned during this process is that it's not defendant friendly for post conviction relief. Is that there's limited resources for inmates who've been wrongfully convicted to help themselves, and that's where you come in, and you're able to with your resources and your ability to search for the truth. It's a huge help to a lot of these people that need it.
Well, it was a long time coming. It was 4 years in the making, and we wrote on the plates, and we put together the motion, and we just kept digging and finding more about the foreperson and particular. And
Yeah.
there was just so much there, as you know, and there was a lot of um, we'd been back to court multiple times, and it was denied, denied, denied. And I had Steve Gosney on here a few weeks ago and
Nice.
talking about the direct appeal and how same thing. He just saw it, and the more he read and the more he looked at it, he was just horrified and
Yeah,
angry and
you can.
sad all at the same time, you know.
Yeah, you really, it's not something that I could look away from. I get a lot of calls, and even at that time, I was getting a lot of calls of people that want to hire me or at least take a look at their case. But this one obviously stuck out, just to the sheer volume of issues, immediate red flags that that,
Yeah.
that popped up, and I was just like, wow, I can't believe this happened.
Yeah,
And
it was loaded, that's for sure. And
uh,
you know, we had so much going on, and then to bring you up to speed was not easy, but you jumped in,
yeah,
excuse me. You dived, I started to say dive and jumped all at the same time. You came on board, and I remember a little bit of that day, not a lot, but I do recall it being such a pleasure finally getting to put a face with a voice. And when you came in and we were waiting for the hearing to start or something to begin, sitting next to me outside the courtroom there and looking over at the monumental volume of information that you had collected and put together and printed out, and a notebook so thick, and you had highlights in different colors and notes in the margin
yeah.
handwritten. And
I'm
I
I'm
just,
old school like that. I still like the written. Something about the written page and making my notes in writing. Everybody uses the computers and digital. I get that. My
yeah.
associate, she kind of makes fun of me because I'm still old school. I like the paper, and
Well,
we all have our own styles. But yeah,
yeah.
that was
If you see my office, I have folders behind me with
uh,
handwritten. And if someone calls and I'm not in the office, I'm like,
yeah,
um, I don't know what we said last time, but if you allow me to get back to the office and get my
right,
folder, I keep good notes. So
absolutely.
I'm old school as well, and that's why I was so impressed. And I remember being very moved by that. And I said something to you, the fact that, if Martin's attorney had 2 years to prepare, and had she come in half or even a fourth of that prepared,
Right. Yeah,
we wouldn't
we
be here
wouldn't be here. We
today.
wouldn't even, yeah.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, Martin had to go through that, and luckily we were able to end that,
Yeah.
and end that injustice.
Yeah. How did that first work with, I don't remember how the negotiation started. Was that you
Yeah,
approaching Aaron or?
I mean, honestly, I really I don't recall how they started. It's been
Yeah.
some time. I just remember that they kind of hit the ground running as soon as they did start. I don't recall if I initiated, she initiated. I mean, I think that even the prosecutor had to realize that there was some glaring issues that they probably didn't really want to, come to light fully, and it was probably better off, you know, for them to
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
to kind of, I don't want to say sweep this under the rug, but to resolve this in a quiet fashion where this didn't make too much noise. And I find that a lot in sometimes these types of cases where there are huge issues that if this gets out in the media and it's an indictment of the whole system,
Right.
they kind of want to nip that in the bud pretty quickly. So, and we were able to, at least capitalize on that to a certain extent, and at least secure his release as soon as possible and move forward.
Right.
So,
I tell a lot of our clients that if you can find something on the state that is not favorable, and the purview the optics don't look so great for how this whole
right,
thing went down, you probably
right.
have a better stand negotiating something
Yeah,
to go.
that's definitely some leverage if you have something that they don't really want to get out as a big issue, or something that's going to cast their office in a certain light, or the system on the whole.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah. Well, I know that you and Martin talked a lot that day, back and forth, working out details. And I do remember that. Um, of course, my expectations were we're going home, and this whole thing's going bye bye. And
right,
I remember you laughing and saying, "Well, let's start with I think it was contributing to the delinquency of a minor." You
right.
said something about that's where I'm going to start, and we'll see where it goes. And then you also said something along the lines that when we get to a point where no one's happy, we have a deal.
That's That's an old adage that I heard from an attorney that that I kind of grew up with, and he said that's where the deal's usually made. In these types of cases where it's a high stakes is where no one's completely happy. At the end of the day, the most important thing was the bottom line, which was getting Martin out of the situation where he was in, and that was ultimately what won out and won the day. Would we have liked to have completely gotten it? Obviously, that was going to obviously take a lot longer to, a process to get down that road. And, with that particular system, there was no guarantees that it was going to lead to a positive outcome. I certainly think that we had a great arguments, plural.
Yeah.
But, you can never guarantee. And at the end of the day, we made the deal that secured his freedom, and that was the most important thing, I think, to everybody.
That night I don't think we told you, but that night we were sitting around the pool at the hotel with our kids, Ashley and Jeremy, and eating pizza and just stunned,
Just marveling in the moment. I can't even imagine. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall to just watch you guys just interact, and the happiness of being together would have been nice to see.
It was pretty great, and when going to the jail, from the courtroom to the jail, or courthouse to the jail, there was a lot of back and forth, I guess, with the state and the probation and all of that. And I took clothes from Martin around the front and gave them to the one guy at the desk, I don't know, sergeant or somebody. And he said, no, there's no time for that. And I said, well, he came here in a jumpsuit and you won't let him leave in a jumpsuit.
Right.
So
he's going to have to wear something. He's going to have to wear some clothes.
And he said, no, there's no time. They're bringing him around back. He's coming out back. And I was like, he said, don't worry, we gave him something to wear.
Well, that was nice of him. That was nice of him.
Yeah. Well, it was. It's still all these years later. It's still hard to comprehend.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. It's hard to. Anybody that's listening, I'm sure that it's hard for them to even imagine that kind of scenario.
Yeah. Is there anything as a criminal defense attorney any advice you can give someone who's been charged and arrested and going into trial? What should they be prepared for or looking for in an attorney?
Yeah, I think you need to. One thing I tell everybody and people that try to contact me, and I say you should not just talk to one attorney, and you shouldn't just go for an attorney because you got a mailer, in the mail, or you saw an advertisement. You should try to talk to anybody who might know the attorney and maybe has used them or knows someone who's used them. And I think personal anecdotes, experience, those are important to know. Okay, this person fought for me. I had this situation, and this person fought for me. And you definitely want to get an attorney who is willing to fight and go to trial. I mean, there's certain attorneys out there that they want to collect the money, and maybe they charge a hefty trial fee to prohibit. And I don't usually charge a trial fee. I very rarely do, because I don't usually want to diminish my client's constitutional rights if they can't come up with the money in a certain pinch in a certain situation. So I usually charge all up front, and I say this encompasses a potential trial. You want a trial attorney. You want someone who has experience, that has tried a number of different cases, and you want someone that you feel comfortable with, that understands what your goals are and what you're trying to get from the representation. Everybody has different expectations. Some people come in and say, I'm completely 100% not guilty. I'm fighting this. I'm not taking anything. Understood. Some people say, get me the best deal you can. You understand the expectations. That communication's key. So I always like to make sure my clients make informed decisions and make sure that I'm keeping them up to date with strengths and weaknesses of the case, any updates, so they know in real time where they stand. So when they're not unprepared, when we go in and we're on the doorstep of trial and they come with an offer, they already kind of know what they're willing to maybe accept and what they're willing not to. And so we kind of are already prepared at that moment. Right. So preparation, communication, those are all key things. Experience, trial experience, willing to fight. those are things you should look for in a defense attorney.
Yeah. Well, you are one of three that we refer clients to, and only three. We've had quite a few clients that came to us with attorneys already paid for, bought and paid for, and
Um,
it's been a disaster. So, we come back to three, and you're one of
I,
them.
it's greatly appreciated.
Well, and I tell them that I said these are all the three that we refer that we trust, and I don't say that lightly about an attorney,
Right,
but we trust these three. And I tell them though, if you want someone who I said they'll all fight for you, and they're all honest, and they're going to be straight up with you,
right,
they'll fight for you in and out of court. But if you want one that's going to talk to you and help you understand what's going on and communicate with you. And if you need to talk to him, you really need to talk to him. He's going to answer. That would be Bryan Savy.
I appreciate that, and my thing is I can never truly put myself in like Martin's position or my other clients' positions, but I know it's not a position I would ever want to be in. I would want my attorney, if I'm in a moment of need, to respond, and even if it's just reassuring about something or something small in that moment, someone's in a bad spot, that might be all they need to get through that moment.
Right.
At the end of the day, like I said, communication's key, even if it's just having a chat and saying, okay, all right, so now you understand this or you understand that, and, we can move past this issue or whatever it may be. So yeah, I do think that that's obviously very important, and I try to do it as much. I try to stay on top of talking to my clients as much as possible. If they ever need to hear from me, I try to set up a legal call with them right away or go see them right away, because I know that time is of the essence in a lot of these situations.
Right. Well, and it's greatly appreciated. There are a lot of clients who, for lack of resources or just lack of, that could be financial or just there's no one out here to be their voice, they can't get an attorney on the phone. And that's why I tell them there are only three that we refer, because they're the three that if I need to talk to them, I can get them on the phone.
Right.
It might
Right.
not be, I mean, I'm not going to text you at midnight, but I know that
Right.
if I need to talk to you and it's important, you're going to read it and you're going to respond. In fact, you respond so quick sometimes. I wonder, how did you even, I'm like, send, whoop, there's Bryan. Okay.
Yeah. So sometimes you just catch me at the right moment. I mean, I
Well,
see it coming up, and I'm like, you know what? I know the answer to this, or let's,
yeah.
while it's in my head, let's just get
Well, and
the
see, that's where
response.
I'm at.
Yep.
Martin's like, you should time schedule. And I said, no, if I don't deal with it now, while
Right.
it's fresh,
Yep.
if I wait,
Right.
it builds up and then I'm completely
Yep.
overwhelmed with
That's kind of how I
communication.
am as well. Is I need to get it out, and while I have the idea, and I have a notepad on my phone, and I'm constantly in my cases. I'm like, oh, I should think about this argument or look at this angle, and I want to make sure I write it down while I have the chance, because I don't want that idea to slip out. And I say, what was I thinking? No, there it is. I have it recorded. I have it written down in my phone. There it is.
Yeah.
I need to discuss this with my client, and I think it helps me in being creative and defending my clients. Is if I could just be sitting and I could see it, I could be watching a TV show and it gives me an idea. It's like, oh, what about, yeah,
Well,
so
we all know how this started. It can be something very simple and it triggers something. And yeah, I'm like,
yep,
I got to write this down. And then you've probably lost track of how many times we're in bed and we're going to sleep. And all of a sudden
yep,
I'm out there in the office
yep,
looking at something. And he's like,
yep.
what are you doing?
My
I
wife
said,
would
you
my
don't
wife
even
would say
ask
the same.
anymore. You just,
My wife would say the same. Like,
I'm
what
sure
what are you
she
doing
would.
up right now? I had this thought. I had to get this down.
Yeah.
So
Well, I will say too that our clients are always very anxious to talk to you. And thank you for doing the legal calls with the guys, because when
absolutely.
I talk to someone and I can feel, of course, my first husband died by suicide. So mental illness is always on the forefront of, and when
Sure.
I talk to somebody and they are not doing good, like Martin, that they're so worn out from screaming from the mountains and no one's listening
All
to,
right.
they're just not listening. And when I came to you, that's where I felt like, I spent nearly 4 years just shouting about the injustice of the case and the injustice of this juror, and how, the judges and the state attorney's office just laughed at me and blew me off and would not wouldn't do anything. And I
Right.
couldn't understand it. It didn't make any sense with me. I could not rationalize the law and crimes committed and punishment with eh,
Yeah.
it was the indifference. And
Yeah.
so when
It's
it
I find that a lot, and especially if the system is built to, you know, finality, I guess is the best way that I can put it. The interest of finality of a judgment is very important. So there is a lot of indifference. Like you have to knock someone over with
yeah,
these has to be a clear legal argument, or you have to knock them over with some facts that are very troubling before
right,
you get anybody to even bat an eye and take a
right.
second look.
Right. And that there are times I talk to somebody like that, and you've talked to a few of them recently, and I realize that they really need an attorney to get on the phone and to say you matter, and your case matters, and what happened to you matters, and
Absolutely.
I'm gonna listen to you. And I tell them, I said, now Bryan is not the kind of attorney that if you act like you're an attorney and you start quoting case law, he's not going to be offended. He's not
Right.
that kind of guy, because they've had others that would get really, who do you think you are? I'm the I
Right.
went to law school. I said he's not like that. I said, in fact, it might be something he could use. Maybe it's something he's never argued before, and he might use it, and God will
I,
God
I've
will work
always
through that.
I've always said that uh, the way I handle things is it's a collaborative, it's a collaborative experience. If anything can help the case, even if it's not my idea. Just because it's not my idea doesn't mean that it's not a good idea.
Right.
I'm at least willing to listen. And here's the thing: I got to be able to filter out, because a lot of the stuff is said, and I'll explain. This is why we can't do this argument. This case law says that we can't do. I at least explain so they understand why I'm not going to make that argument. Or, hey, you know what? I think let's use that, or I
Yeah,
think that
might work.
strengthens this argument, and it happens.
Yeah.
And so, to just totally discount, because the people I'm working with, I mean, not to say that some of them aren't very intelligent. Just because they found themselves in this situation doesn't mean they're not intelligent. Doesn't mean they don't understand. And oftentimes they've been able to learn a lot,
Right.
with the time on their hands, and learn about their case and learn about the law.
Right.
And what's to say that they don't know something? And so I'm
Right.
never going to discount anybody just because they don't have a law degree. If they have an idea that might be able to help their case, because it's their case at the end of the day.
Right.
It's their ship, and
Right.
if they're gonna come up with any idea that's going to put us in the right direction, I'm certainly going to listen and try to use it and to the best of my abilities.
Well, you don't know this, but the guys that have been allowed to talk to you have called me almost immediately following the conversation with you, and they're a different person. They are excited, they are encouraged, they thank me over and over for connecting them to you. And they always say, please tell Bryan, thank you so much for the call and for listening and hearing me out. And it's just being
Yeah,
heard,
I mean,
that you get in there and they take your voice. And if you don't have someone out here, and then it's like, I'm out here but I don't know what I'm doing.
right,
I'm telling the state attorney it's fraud on the court, and he's laughing at me. It's direct criminal contempt. It's not. I said, well, I'm not an attorney, I don't know, I'm just
right.
googling things and reading law book. And in fact, this one is why our argument when we got to you was so strong, because you spent what, 3 years in the law library?
every week.
Yeah,
3 weeks.
and it showed. I mean, a lot of that's why I was able to jump in the minimal amount of time, is because there was a lot already in place that I could use to work with.
Yeah.
So,
He said he
but
would just pull a big book off the shelf and
And start reading.
start
yeah.
reading.
Divorce cases, slip and fall cases,
You knew a
malpractice.
bunch of, yeah, you knew a bunch of
The
different
book's
areas.
like that thick. You just
Yeah,
start reading it.
yeah,
Yeah.
just
And
learn,
thankfully
you
he
learn
has an
something new.
amazing memory. So he
Yeah,
remembered a lot of that. And then he would bring all of that. He would call me, and he'd have notes, and I'm writing down. And it would, that's the hard thing about visitation. They won't allow you to take anything into there. We tried to get, even when we were working on some things and I had printed out some things, I tried to get the warden to let me bring some of the paperwork in so I could go over with him. And no, absolutely not. And I get it. If you make an exception for one, then everybody gets to do it.
Right.
But we had to write this on the phone and, just from
Yeah,
memory.
they don't make it easy. They don't make it
No,
easy,
no,
and that's why and all the arguments we're making with these cases is that this is the situation. These people have no resources. They don't make it easy for them to fight their case from where they are. And
right.
so, at the end of the day, it's, to say that they should have exercised due diligence to find certain things that, I mean, they're in the basement. How are they
Right.
supposed to find these things?
Locked
And
up. Yeah.
right. And you hear
Yeah.
the story you're telling me about how difficult it was just to put, some of this stuff together, just because of the resources and how everything's set up. So, I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Well, and back then, the phone calls were only 15 minutes at a time.
right,
So, we would talk, and there were days he couldn't call me at all.
right,
And then, but he would try to get on the phone, but he always said that that's a very, that if you're on the phone and you hog the phone, that's a
right.
bad idea.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sure that's going to piss off some people.
Yeah. You could end up in medical or jail, one of the,
Yeah,
Even if the phone's available, you walk away for a little while and wait, make sure everybody's
right. Yeah, no one's using it. Okay.
and then you go back to the phone. Otherwise,
Right. Yeah,
you call after and after a while.
yeah. Yeah. You got to really watch it. But there were, and interesting that you said too, I was reading of Wadir today, and somebody asked me, in fact, I'll be reaching out to you about that one because Michael Efferman worked on the post conviction. So I've reached out to him, but if he can't figure it out, then I'll throw it your way. But I was looking for some victimization information within all of the documents, the indictment, and everything. And I noticed that from the very first arrest all the way through to where he is now, which is 10 years later. So you can imagine there were a lot of documents to look through. Every single thing from the very beginning all the way to today, the accuser, and this was the sex case accusation, the accuser was called the victim,
yep,
not alleged victim,
yeah.
victim from the
Don't,
very beginning.
don't get me started on this because I have butted heads with judges and I object to the reference if we're in trial that nothing's been proven at this point, Judge, that's improper to refer to them. I've had judges that I've moved to recuse off cases when they've issued orders saying that, I've seeking to get records that, the victim has lied in a number of different ways. I point them out and I say, I want to get their phone records. I want to get their social media because I believe that there's probably evidence of them lying about other things in this case. And I think it's fair game. And I've had a judge issue an order saying I'm harassing the victim, and this is, and yeah, and so I moved to recuse them. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
and that's they're
Yeah.
not treating it as innocent until proven guilty when they refer to people in such terms. If it's proven
Right.
in a court of law, so be it. Until
Right.
then, it's improper.
And it's the verbiage and the way that, you're not innocent till
No,
proven
it's a
guilty.
slant that, just if we're even already talking in those terms, people are already thinking in those terms. So, I mean, it's all a mindset. You have to get people to break people of this mindset. And this is something I always talk about in jury selection. You're the natural human tendency when you see someone sitting there, what did that person do?
Right.
You see someone pulled over on the side of the road. I wonder what that person did. It's not,
Right.
oh, is their headlight? No, you're assuming, oh, they did something wrong.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a natural human tendency, and you almost have to, I'm not going to say put in the juror's face, but get them to realize that perspective before they're ever going to change their perspective.
Right.
They have to understand that. And so I will say in working a lot of these, juror concealment cases that I've worked with you, it's definitely, I've gotten better at jury selection, as from when a young attorney, I was, I didn't think jury selection when I first started I was like, I'm just going to be a better lawyer and just win the case. No,
Right.
it's about who's hearing, and your audience is very important. I learned that over the years, but I've gotten even better with jury selection now. Is I'm a lot more diligent, and just based on the stuff that you found, that just it
Right.
shocks the conscience. It's like, yeah, I don't just quit it asking them one time. If someone stole your bike when you were 10, I want to know about it. Like
Right.
and
Yeah.
lo and behold, you won't believe almost every time. Oh, you know what? I remember
I
now
do
that
remember something.
right. It's
Yeah.
amazing, and we'll go to, I'll ask him about it in the morning. We go to lunch. First thing I ask him, did you think of anything over the break?
Yeah.
All the questions I asked you,
Right.
And sure enough, almost every time someone's like, "Oh, I did forget about you." Of course. So, either you forget about it, and some of this is intentional, some of it's subconscious. It's not for me to comment. It's up for the judge to determine that. But at the end of the day, things are being concealed, and we need to do what we can to bring everything to light, because that's the only place that justice can thrive.
Yeah, well, that's what gives people hope. And then Ravis, you were able to bring him home. And
Absolutely.
Ravis, we did the podcast last week with Ravis, and yeah, he's a hoot. He's
He's
doing wonderful, by the way. Just
yeah. I
absolutely.
spoke with him a couple weeks ago as well, and
Yeah,
I think
he
he's
hit the
actually
ground running.
yeah, I think he's actually supposed to be stopping by the area and seeing my law clerk and I, and popping in and saying hello. So that'll be nice. That'll be nice.
That will be. Well, we appreciate everything that you do for us and for our clients, and
Likewise.
help us to get better at what we do, and just keep
We're always
fighting.
trying to get better, because if we're not, then we should just hang it up. Because I find that yeah, do I do good work? Do I work hard? I do, but I'm never satisfied, and I always want to do better, because that's the only way that you can. So
Right.
and I think we share that philosophy, and I think that's why we work well together. So
I agree, and thank you so much, and thanks for your time.
absolutely.
Tell the family said hey.
Will do.
You
You
go
tell your
back
family
to
as well, and I'm gonna go back to see if the kids are in
daddy
bed. They're
mode.
probably sleeping by now, but
Oh,
I was a pleasure to be on here and speak with
thank
you, and
you.
see you guys as always. And yep, hopefully we'll do it again sometime soon.
Thank you, Bryan. Have a
Yep,
good night.
yep. Have a great night.
Thank you for watching another episode of Jurors in Disguise. Until next time, if you know of someone who's been convicted by a jury and needs our help, you will find our contact information in the description below. Also, be sure to like and subscribe so you can be a part of this. Remember, the courtroom may be silent, but we won't be. So speak up, speak out, and always speak the truth.